way.
Welcome to Upper Lafayette on the Move. I'm Jan Swift. Thank you for joining us today. We're honored to have as today's guest Ray Green, a friend of mine and a local advocate for Project Armchair. Ray,
well,
thank you so much for being here.
I'm honored that you call me your friend.
Well,
believe me, I have been called much worse.
Well, I hope you will take that as a high compliment. I met Ray at a local Concerned Citizens for Good Government meeting a few weeks back, and I was really intrigued by your message about Project Armchair. And so while we're going to talk about that, I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to get to know Ray better. I know that you've been active in other issues, and I'd like people to know who you are and the heart behind what you do, Ray. So would you please give us a background of where you grew up, how long you've been in Lafayette, and some of your career highlights?
Can I mention I'm from Arkansas, and Arkansas beat LSU last year in football?
Oh,
okay,
no.
I won't mention that. But I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm a Korean veteran. And I was in broadcasting for about 6 years, and I originally moved to Lafayette to continue that profession, but I'll tell you about that in just a minute. But I've had an interesting career. As I say, I did move to Lafayette in 1970, I believe it was. Now, you know what they say about your memory. When your memory goes, you might as well forget it. So anyhow, I moved here to be the anchor man for one of the local TV stations. But having a career in broadcasting was very interesting. I got to meet a lot of interesting people. Mm-hmm. For example, occasionally somebody still to this day will call me and ask me to appear at their civic club and talk about my experience in meeting Elvis Presley.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, I met young Elvis way back in 1956, before you were born, I think.
The year before, yeah, not much.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd never guess.
Thank you.
But anyhow,
check.
He was coming to Little Rock, Arkansas, and he was going to be in town that night. And a man from the Chamber of Commerce, who owns the largest advertising agency in Arkansas at the time, he called me and he said, "Look, we've got this young kid coming into Arkansas tonight. Would you like to interview him?" I said, "Who is it?" He said, "Elvis Presley." I said, "Now, bear in mind, this is 1956.
Yeah.
I said, "No, not really." Then it dawned on me, wait a minute, he's got the #1 song in the country out now, Heartbreak Hotel. Okay, what the heck, I'll be fine, I'll do it. Whew, boy, I sure am glad I did.
What was he like?
I say, Jan, that there were two Elvises. There was the original Elvis, which I met, mm-hmm. who was down to earth, very nice. In fact, he called me sir all during the interview, and we're the same age. Can you imagine Elvis Presley looking like me now? But I have the advantage on him. I'm still alive.
Right.
But as I say, I met the original Elvis. Mm-hmm. If anybody is interested, all they got to do, if you want to see the interview with some pictures, Google Ray Green Little Rock Elvis interview.
I will do that.
And you'll see the whole 9 yards. And it's free. Mm-hmm. But it was very, very interesting. I still have pictures of that night, he and I together. And by the way, I'm very thrilled that that interview has now gone viral. It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Elvis Presley Museum in Tupelo, Mississippi, Graceland, and the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. under the American History section. So that and $1 and I get a cup of coffee in a lot of places.
I call that $1 VIP, so I gotcha. So you were in radio and TV then for about 25 years,
yes.
You were saying.
I came to Lafayette on a vacation. My father-in-law was chief engineer for Evangeline May Bread. And I went by one of the local TV stations. Bob Ham, who's deceased now, he was news director at the time, introduced himself and he said, "What do you do up in Charlotte? That's a major market."
Right.
I said, "Well, I do the whole 9 yards, radio, TV, sports, the whole bit." He said, "Well, we're looking for an anchor man. Would you like to take an audition?" Sure, what the heck, doesn't cost anything. So I did. That's before the gray hair and the pot belly and the wrinkled face and some of the bad habits. So I took the audition and he said, "Well, you're what we're looking for if you're interested." I said, "Well, toss me a figure." He did. We didn't have contracts in those days, just a handshake and you're on your way.
Right.
So I said, let me go home and talk to my wife, see if she wants to move to Lafayette, because I got to go back to Charlotte and sell our house and so forth. So I did. She says, oh, yes, I'd love to move to Lafayette. So went back to Charlotte, sold her house, moved to Lafayette, bought a new house, moved in, went by the TV station. Uh-oh, went by the payroll section, slight little communications gap. The money I thought I was moving here for was per month. I thought it was per week. I said, man, I can't take a $250 a week cut just to move to Lafayette, Louisiana. Well, I thought that's what we had agreed on.
Yeah.
I learned.
Hate when that happens.
So then I started selling cars for a short time. One day, a man, Bob Oden was his name, same as the some kind of commissioner, but that was a different man.
Agriculture.
But this Bob Oden worked with Chamber of Commerce. I think he moved on to Monroe, but he was interested in automobile, and he said something about having a problem. Well, I gave him a little 2-bit dissertation about problems, and he said, look, I'm gonna buy the car, providing you come down to the chamber and talk to my people the same way you talk to me about the problem bit. Well, having been in radio and TV for 25 years, that was no problem. I said, okay, fine, you'd be delighted. Well, after I got through with that, he had, in the meantime, lined me up to go to the Lake Charles Chamber of Commerce. And that was a little paying gig. When I completed that one, 5 businessmen came up to me and said, how much would you charge to come out to my company and talk to us today about this problem bit and other things that you talked about? Never forget it. I was sitting down on my fingers. I said, well, my normal fee, $350. All 5 of them said, okay, that's good. I thought, gee, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Golly, that's almost $2,000 from one gig. So I came back to Lafayette and told Rocky Roy with Lafayette Motors, I said, man, I don't have time to sell cars anymore. I done got me a new profession. So I started doing motivational speaking. I started my own company called Redirectional Thinking. Redirect your thinking and make things happen in life and in sales. I'm a firm believer, Jan, that everything that you ever hope to accomplish or achieve in your entire life depends on you and your ability to sell yourself or somebody else into taking action.
You're right.
Nothing happens without action. No action, no results. So I started my own company, and one day I did a program for the National Motor Club, which is the largest independent motor club, second only to AAA. Unbeknown to me, the national sales manager was there. After the completion of the program, he said, would you be willing to fly to Dallas on our jet and meet our president? I think he has something he'd like to say to you. I thought, uh-oh, what'd I do now? Yeah. I'm famous for sticking my foot in my mouth. So we flew to Dallas, and the president offered me a deal. He wanted me to tour 35 states. Well, hey.
Oh, my gosh.
Whoopie-doo-dah.
Awesome.
Bingo, yes,
yeah,
fine.
Bingo is right.
Every morning for a year, I'd go out to Paul Fournette's flying service. A little Cessna Citation would fly in, and old Ray Green and his suggestions. See, I don't give advice. Wise people don't need it, and fools won't follow it. But I do offer proven suggestions. So we took off. I'd do one program usually in the morning. I'd be in North Carolina in the morning, maybe South Carolina that night. I got to the point, Jan, where I'd call down to the motel and say, excuse me, what state are we in?
Yeah, I know.
What city are we in?
Oh, my gosh.
The guy said, boy, you must have hung one on last night.
No.
I can't remember where you are.
That's exciting.
So I did that for about a year until the contract was complete. Then they wanted me to move to Ohio. Hey, I hadn't lost anything in Ohio. So I stayed here and started working for myself. Then I started touring all over the United States, doing what I really, for my own company, yes.
I want you to explain what the message is about there aren't problems, but
that's about the only thing I learned in my college year in ethics and psychology 101. The very first day, Jan, the psychology instructor met us at the door. She says, come in, have a seat. I thought, oh boy. She started talking about psychology, and I thought, ring-a-ding-a-ding, this is going to be interesting. She says, now here's your assignment tomorrow. I'm going to cut this short. Tomorrow I want you to come to class and bring 3 things or you can't come in. Bring a dictionary, a pair of scissors, and a list of all your problems. A list of all your problems, that's easy because I got a bunch of them. I was a Korean veteran. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have anything. So I said, okay. Next day, she met us at the door. Let's see your scissors. Let's see your dictionary. Let's see your list of problems. Okay, have a seat. She says, now, I want you to take that list of so-called problems, and I want you to take the scissors and cut out the word problem and substitute in its place either the word opportunity or challenge, and then look at it and go over your list and see how many problems you really think you have. Oh, that's easy. Okay, number one problem, I don't have a car. Well, no, wait a minute. Is that really a problem? Nah, it's a challenge. It's an opportunity. Save my money. I was working for a drugstore, by the way, for 52 cents an hour from 4 in the afternoon until 11 o'clock at night to get through college. How many people would do that today?
Well, none.
But I did it.
Right. It was a different day.
I got to use 3 of the most beautiful words that God has given man the pleasure of saying. I did it! So...
And you graduated?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
But that changed your perspective on
yes,
where you were in life.
On a lot of things, absolutely. Then I had always wanted to get into radio, and I entered a state speech festival. My girlfriend suggested that I enter in 2 categories, radio speaking and poetry reading.
Oh, man.
I said, you got to be kidding. Poetry reading? She says, if you don't enter those 2 contests, I'm not going to go out with you anymore.
Oh, well.
I entered.
Where's the form?
First place.
You did? In both?
Where is it? So I won first place. And as a reward, one of the girls in my speech class said, my daddy would like to talk to you. I said, your daddy, what does he do? He's a manager for a local radio station. Oh, okay.
That's how you got into that.
That's how I got into.
And you have a good voice.
I used to have. It's gone now.
Well.
But anyhow, Cy Young was his name, and he offered me a brand new suit. The day after I graduated from college, he called me down. I had a radio program. First week, I was on 30 minutes a day. Second week, 1 hour. Third week, 2 hours. Fourth week, 3 hours in the afternoon. To end up, making a long story short, I was voted the top disc jockey in Arkansas. My radio program had more listeners than all the other 10 stations combined, and I can prove it. Still
That's
have
so cool.
a plaque. But anyhow, he
Wonderful.
said, what are you getting for graduation? And I said, oh, just my mother and me, I guess a belt or maybe a wallet or something. He says, well, I'd like to give you something. I said, okay. He says, I'd like to give you a full-time job. 40 hours a week, $1 an hour is a full-time staff announcer. Wow, $1 an hour? Man, that was a big jump from 52 cents an hour and doing what I love to do.
What you loved, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so that's how I got started in radio. $1 an hour.
Well, wow. I want to seize on where you had been in life and what you've been doing. And you talked about there are no problems. There are perhaps challenges or opportunities. And that's why you're here today. I want to talk about the challenges a lot of people face and why you're an advocate, a proponent for Project Armchair. So would you please tell us what led you to this and turn a problem into an opportunity?
Okay. About a couple of years ago now, actually, when I think about it, I went to the Golden Corral here in Lafayette. Fine place. They have over 100 chairs, but not a single one of them with arms on it. In order for me to get up, I was with 4 friends. I had to put my entire forearm on the chair and push to get up. I spilled 3 glasses of water and 2 plates of food all over the floor. Naturally, everybody turned around and looked, and it's humiliating. It's embarrassing. It robs me of what dignity I have left. In the meantime, my health has gone downhill. I've had a triple bypass, a pacemaker, and 2 stents, and I have osteoarthritis in my left leg. I can't bend it. So it's almost impossible for me to get up out of a chair with no arms in it. Thank God you got them today, or I'd be here all night.
I was thankful, I know.
Because I don't think you're healthy enough to lift me out of a chair. But anyhow, I said, something's got to be done about this. Yeah. So I started observing. We have some 40% of the people in Louisiana. We have 4 million people. So 25%, rough figures, got 1 million people in Louisiana. They're either senior citizens, handicapped, or disabled veterans. That's a bunch.
That's a bunch.
And nobody's paying any attention because they're not aware of it. So I started doing a little investigating. I've made a lot of phone calls, and I got in touch with Congressman Stuart Bishop. Last year, we managed to get a law passed that is of last year, well, in fact, this year, every new government entity and renovations in Louisiana must have at least 5% of their chairs with arms in them.
I read that law before we came to do the show, and I know there were some people that asked to opt out, but it's a big step forward to have that in government buildings, because that's where a lot of people go that are looking for, especially veterans and others, that are going to do their business.
That was only a stepping stone.
Right, but it's a foot in the door.
A foot in the door, absolutely.
That's always important.
So now then, what we're trying to do is to get another law passed stating, and we're going to do it. He's already promised me that in the legislature next year, when I have some friends, hopefully it's going to be there, maybe help me out, he's going to introduce a new bill calling for 25% of all the restaurants. It's under the Americans with Disability Act, if people will look it up. And it says quite simply that it's under public accommodations. Places of public accommodations offer a wide range of entities such as restaurants, hotels, theaters, doctors' offices, pharmacies. I go to get a prescription filled. I have to take 6 a day. And the way the insurance company insists, I have to spread it out. I can't get them all at one time. They want you to get one time, another time. Every time I go to the drugstore, they say, okay, it'll be 30 minutes, have a seat. Well, there's no place where I can sit down and get up.
Right.
So I've called a home office up in Bentonville, Arkansas. I won't mention the name of the place. They say, well, we're going to work on it. Well, how long does it take them to work on it? You're either going to do it or you're not. Let's do it.
Could probably have a chair in the back in the warehouse.
Yeah, well, I didn't find it, but anyhow, they got the bench type seats with no arms on them.
Right.
So I'm working diligently trying to get all the restaurants, all the meeting places. How many times you went to the concerned citizens? You notice they only have one chair in there with arms, and guess who was sitting in it? Because I walk into Elise's, and as soon as I walk in, the manager says, hey, Ray, got your chair in there. So they're very kind. They have some chairs. They have 5% of their chairs. They're the first one and the only restaurant at the time that I know of that displayed. And I
your
think
decal, I saw that.
The decal, I didn't bring it with me.
Kudos to Elise's.
But anyhow, they do have 5% of their chairs with arms. But I'm not the only one. We have, in fact, over to the legislature, when I went over there to testify to get the bill passed for the high school seniors, which went into effect the 1st of July.
To take civics
classes. All high school all high school students now have to pass a civics course, which includes the civics test that all immigrants must pass in order to become citizens. But I went into the cafeteria, or whatever you call it over there, and it's always full. And there was about 18 people, I counted them, sitting at one table. And I walked over, darn it, I was mad. There wasn't a single chair in there with arms on it. I said, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, do any of you happen to know where I could get a chair around here with arms in it? Because I cannot sit down in this chair and get up by myself without having some arms on it. They looked at me like I was crazy, but 6 of them jumped up and took off. They brought back a chair. 2 of them walked over and helped me be seated. Because they have a couple of congressmen over there on crutches, and a couple of them are senior citizens, older than me, if that's possible. But imagine the opportunity there.
Right.
So that's why we're going to introduce next year now a bill in the legislature, and I've already got a man who's going to do it, Stuart Bishop again, is going to introduce a new bill calling for all the restaurants, all the meeting places, and all the waiting rooms to have at least 5% of their chairs. Our goal is very simple, and I don't think it's asking too much, to help senior citizens, handicapped and disabled veterans to maintain a little dignity. The Daily Advertiser was extremely nice to us. They ran practically a half-a-page story.
Megan Wyatt did a great job.
Called For Veterans, Armchair is a Vehicle for Dignity. That's what it boils down to. I don't like the idea of having to ask some perfect stranger, excuse me, would you help me get up? That's embarrassing. It hurts my feelings. But I cannot get up from one of these steel chairs.
And you can't carry one on your back to go with you.
I've actually thought about putting one in a wagon and dragging it around town to get attention.
Lightweight, like you wear, like we put out by the soccer field. Well, I did a little research on this, and I know there's pros and cons, and the reason I wanted to do the show today with you is to help you promote this, because I'm all about, just like we do with Upper Lafayette, I find that if we can promote the reasons for things and the goodness behind, you know, some of what you're asking for, people usually are willing to help. I know there are some people, Ray, that are hesitant to see government imposing rules. And so what I wanted to do today, no matter what side you're on that argument, we all want to help people if we can. And it's not asking much to have 1 or 2 chairs, like you're saying, 5%.
I have not met a single individual that has turned thumb down on this.
No, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
That they all say it's a good idea, but we just don't like the idea of having government to tell us we got to do anything.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. If we didn't have government telling people once in a while to do something, we wouldn't have income tax, we wouldn't have street signs, we wouldn't have many of the look at the red
or
flags.
Handicapped accessibility.
Right, we wouldn't have the handicapped parking places, the guardrails, the restrooms. So once in a while, the general population has to be prodded somewhat. And I don't think, question, is it asking too much for the average restaurant, meeting room, and business organization to have 5% of their seating capacity with arms to accommodate the seniors, the handicapped, and disabled veterans, yes or no?
I'm answering for Jan Swift. I say no, it's not asking too much. And I do want to say, by Ray raising awareness in my mind, when I was at church yesterday, I noticed at Asbury United Methodist, where our choir is, there are, you know, seats without, they're like folding chairs without arms. But in the front, where several of our choir members sit that are disabled, they have seats with arms. And so they're able to conduct themselves with dignity, rise, and, you know, as they're able to. And it's something I had never noticed because I had never considered it. I've had handicapped family members, and I don't remember us ever talking about this. I just knew that it was a challenge getting around. But until you brought this to my attention, I never really had thought about it.
Well, being a young, beautiful, energetic, athletic individual like you certainly wouldn't be aware of it.
My father, though, was a double amputee, and my mother was also, she had problems. And we've had other family members and friends with disabilities. And so as aware as I wasn't drilling down to the practical aspects that you're bringing up. So I think the first step for us is just to let people know this is a need. And most people that run businesses, I think they want to accommodate. They don't want to be, I'm not saying, I don't want to get on the argument, but I think they want to help people. And so I think the first step is to raise awareness like you did with Stuart Bishop, one of our state rep here in Lafayette. I'm just so proud of him for carrying this ball for you.
Me too, and he's going to introduce a bill next year in the legislature to do just that for the restaurants, for the meeting places, and the various places. Because
you can leverage your voice, his voice, and others to say this is a request. We're asking for accommodations, and I think most people get that.
Well, to me, it's a form of disability discrimination. But you know, that word, disability, it depends on who you're asking.
Right.
I've talked to several national agencies, and they disagree on the exact term. For example, I have it written here. The United States Access Board is an independent federal agency that's promoting equality for people with disabilities and accessibility design and the development of accessibility guidelines and standards. But they don't agree even with the Americans with Disability Act as to exactly what discrimination with disabilities are. Did you realize that for public accommodations in Washington under the Americans with Disability Act, they got 12 different departments? And I think each one of them have a different definition as to what disability discrimination is. I have here in my little packet, letters from Congressman Bustani, from the Department of Justice, from several other places. And I haven't received any response from some of these federal agencies. So the heck with them. I'm going to try the state first. And once we set a precedent for the state, then we can go after the big boys.
Right. Ray, unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Already?
Yeah, I know. I'm willing to do another show next year. I want to hear back, and I would keep you on, but we've got a time slot. On behalf of all of us, thank you for your service in the military, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you for watching today's show. I'm Jan Swift with another episode of Upper Lafayette on the Move.